Hi, this is Dr. Swapna and I welcome you to your Learn Lab. If you are an IGNOU student looking for help in your studies, then you have reached the right place. Here we have lecture videos on different core and elective subjects of important IGNOU courses. We aim to help you ace your exams. So hit subscribe to our channel, and as you watch, make sure to like and share too. Come and join me on this beautiful learning journey. In this video, we study Unit 4, the peripheral nervous system, which is of Block 2, which is titled the nervous system. In our previous videos, we have learnt about the two types of nervous system, right? Which are the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. And we also studied that they are involved in the control and coordination functions in our body. So we also know that the central nervous system, which includes brain and spinal cord, and these acts like kind of the mission control. Mission being control and coordination of your body. And then we have the peripheral nervous system, which provides the communication channel to the central nervous system. Without the peripheral nervous system, the CNS would be, or the central nervous system would be cut off from the mission command center. Like, without any email or any phone or any medium to send out instructions. So, the cranial and spinal nerves are the important tools of the peripheral nervous system, and these are structurally defined and very crucial functionally. It serves as the input-output system of our central nervous system. And in this video, we are going to learn about what cranial nerves are, what are the different types of cranial nerves, and what are their functions. We also study what are spinal nerves, what are the different types of spinal nerves, and what are their functions. Besides that, I'll also tell you tricks and mnemonics to remember the names and numbers of the cranial and spinal nerves. We start with the cranial nerves. Let's look what they are. Nerves are simply bundles of neurons. Okay. Now, nerves can have axons or it can have cell bodies also. Our cranial nerves, these are bundles of axons. Then we have 12 pairs of cranial nerves arising from the brain stem. One from the right side and one from the left side. So if this is the brain stem, we'll have 12 pairs. One on the right, one on the left. One on the right, one on the left. Is this way 12 here and 12 here. Okay, we have it here. You can see it here, right? They innervate the head and neck, or these neurons connect the brain to different parts of head and neck, except for one of them. This here, vagus nerve. This is kind of the rebellious one amongst the cranial nerves because they venture into thorax and your abdomen too. Thorax is your chest region and your tummy also. The rest of the cranial nerves, they sincerely are restricted to head and the neck regions. Alright. Now, each cranial nerve has a specific function. Okay. Some are purely sensory in what they are doing, like smell or vision. And these are called sensory cranial nerve. These are a group of axons involved in sensory function, and this is also called afferent function. We have studied, I have told you multiple times about sensory neurons and afferent neurons, right? We also have how to remember this mnemonic also. You can go back and watch that video on neurons, right? So the first one, they might be purely sensory. Secondly, they can be purely motor, means involved in movements of body parts. Here, cranial nerves, when they have a motor function, they are group of axons involved in movement of eyes or tongue. Alright, because we said cranial nerves innervate your head and neck. This is also efferent function. Efferent means exiting from the brain. Then the third one, we have mixed cranial nerves, which means they are mixed in function. They handle complete tasks like facial expression, swallowing, or autonomic control, where both sensory and motor functions are required. Alright, so all the cranial nerves, they can be either sensory, they may be either motor in nature, or they may be mixed or have both functions. What makes the cranial nerves unique is that they are directly connected to brain structures. So one end would be somewhere in your head, neck or the vagus part, and the other part would be directly connected to brain structures. And this allows for highly specialized and localized functions. Now, cranial nerves are known by their name and number. You see here, you can see a name and a corresponding number. The cranial nerves 1 to 4 are in the midbrain and forebrain. Top part. First 4 cranial nerves are on the top parts of the brain, which are forebrain and midbrain. And then 5 to 12 are in the hindbrain. Which are these regions of hindbrain? Medulla and pons. Alright. Now let's see the nerves one by one. Now we need to remember all these names in this order with their functions. We also need to remember if they are sensory, motor or mixed. Alright, I'll give you a mnemonic towards the end, but first let's look at each of these nerves. Okay, so the first one we have is olfactory nerve. This is the cranial nerve number 1. It is sensory in function and it is responsible for sense of smell. Olfaction, the word itself means smell. So olfactory nerve is the nerve number 1. It is sensory in function and is responsible for the sense of smell. Cranial nerve number 2 is called optic nerve. The word optic related to eye, right? So it is sensory in function and it carries visual information from retina to the brain. Alright. Third one we have oculomotor nerve. This is the cranial nerve number 3. See, as in the name oculomotor, it is motor in function, which means it controls most of the eye muscles, including those that move the eye, raise the eyelid and control the pupil size. We saw what is pupil, right? We saw how pupil move when we were studying hindbrain. So this was oculomotor, which is the third cranial nerve. Then we have the fourth cranial nerve, which is called trochlear nerve. This is also motor in function. It controls the superior oblique muscle. This muscle also is related to eye. It rotates the eye downwards and inwards. Okay, I know the names are a bit difficult, but yeah, this is something that you need to study and remember. Trochlear nerve is the motor nerve and it controls the rotation of the eye downwards and inwards. Then we have cranial nerve number 5, which is trigeminal nerve. It is both sensory and motor. It's a mixed nerve, mixed function, right? So it provides sensation to the face and controls muscles of chewing. So this is its sensory function. What? It provides sensation to the face. So if something touches your face, you get to know because of the trigeminal nerve. And it also controls the muscles of chewing. This is the motor function. Alright. Then we have cranial nerve number 6, which is abducens. It is also motor in function. It controls the lateral rectus muscle. You may not remember the name of the muscle. Just remember that it's also involved in outward movement of the eye. Since most of these nerves are connected to head and neck, the functions are also related to mostly your eyes and your mouth. Alright, so abducens controls the movement of the eye, just like the trochlear nerve also. Then we have the cranial nerve number 7, which is called facial nerve. This is also mixed nerve. It has both sensory and motor controls. What does it do? It controls the facial muscles for expressions, all your facial expression that is formed. You might be happy, you might be angry. All those expressions are formed by this facial nerves. Okay. It provides taste sensation from the anterior 2/3 of the tongue and innervates the salivary glands. So what does facial nerve do? It's motor in function and sensory in function. Which is the sensory part? Taste. It helps you taste something that you eat. And it also helps in innervating salivary gland, which means it will help in the saliva secretion from in your mouth. Okay. What is the motor function? Expression. Facial expressions is the motor function of facial nerve. Then we have cranial nerve number 8, which is vestibulocochlear nerve. Now, cochlea is a part of the ear. Okay, so it is a sensory nerve and it is responsible for hearing and balance. Alright. Next we have cranial nerve number 9. This is glossopharyngeal nerve, and it is a mixed nerve, or it functions both as sensory and motor nerves. It provides taste sensation from the posterior one-third of the tongue. Now, which nerve was providing taste sensation from the anterior two-thirds of the tongue? Remember, facial nerve we just studied. And the remaining part of the tongue is controlled by this glossopharyngeal nerve. It also controls some muscles of swallowing, and it innervates the parotid salivary gland. You don't need to remember this particular name. Even if you just remember that it innervates the salivary gland, it's enough. Okay, so facial nerve, anterior two-thirds of the tongue, and glossopharyngeal nerve, the posterior one-third of the tongue. All right. Next we have the wanderer, or the rebellious nerve of the cranial nerve system. This is the cranial nerve number 10, the vagus nerve. It's both sensory and motor in function. It's a mixed nerve. It controls the muscles of the palate. Palate, where is the palate? Your tongue. Your palate is in your tongue. Then it also controls the muscles of your pharynx, which is in your neck, and larynx, your voice box. It provides sensation to the pharynx and larynx, and it innervates various organs in the chest and abdomen, including the heart, lungs, and digestive system. Okay, so vagus nerve, it's not restricted to your neck. It also goes to your abdomen, chest, heart, lungs, and digestive system, because of which we call the nervous system, vagus nerve, as the wanderer, or also the rebellious nerve of the cranial nervous system. Okay. Next we have a cranial nerve number 11, which is also called accessory nerve. Accessory nerve is motor in function. It controls the muscles required for the neck and shoulder movements. So these are the nerves which help you move your neck and shoulder. So this is motor in function. Last one, cranial nerve number 12, we have hypoglossal nerve. This is also motor in function. It controls the muscles of the tongue. Okay, so we have discussed all the 12 nerves. I'll tell you, have a trick to remember here. Okay, so we have two mnemonics here. This one to remember the function, whether it is sensory, motor, or mixed, and this one to remember the names. Might be a bit tricky, but this is what I use to remember these. So either you can use the same or you can make your own, because mnemonics is all about how you remember it. And if you have some good ones, I would suggest put down it in the comments also. Maybe I can also help use it, or your friends can also use it, right? So let's look at these. So the 12 pairs, first one we have olfactory. Olfactory was what? Smell. Optic was it? What was it? For seeing, seer. Oculomotor. Oculomotor, which is it is motor and it's used for eyeball movement. So we have three nerves, first three nerves starting from O. Which are they? Olfactory, optic, and oculomotor. Then we have trochlear, again for eye movements. Then we have trigeminal, which are for chewing, facial expression, and it is also connected to your teeth. So we have 2T here. Then we have abducens for again eyeball movement, and then we have facial for expressions, and we also know for tasting on the anterior two-thirds of your tongue. So that makes it A, F, and then we have vestibulocochlear. Yeah, now what was that for? For, we said cochlea is a part of the ear and it is responsible for sound and balance. Then we have glossopharyngeal, which is for tasting. Okay, it's a taste tester, also movement of tongue. Then we have the wanderer vagus. Okay, it is responsible for sending signals to your abdomen also, chest also, and controls autonomic functions also. Then we have spinal accessory, which is for shoulder movements, and we have hypoglossal for tongue movement. So we have O3, T2, A, F, V, G, V, S, H. I don't know how to remember this, but yeah, I have the mnemonic here. Only one of the two athletes felt victorious, getting very satisfied and happy. Only one of three. Okay, only one of three O's. The two athletes felt victorious, getting very satisfied and happy. Now for function. Some say money matters. S for sensory, M for motor, but B for both. Because mixed is also M, motor is also M. To avoid confusion, we are using B for both. But my brother says big books matter more. This is a very common one which you might find in internet also. Okay, so you can remember either of this. I'm telling you, if the question comes in the exam, you will have to write the names of all these 12 nerves. You will also have to write which of those are sensory and which of these are motor and which of these are mixed. So make sure you remember either this mnemonic or create something of your own. So another trick I used to, employ is when I create mnemonics, I use my local language. Okay, my mother tongue, I have a mother tongue and I have another tongue of the state where I grew up. So I have two languages which are of comfort to me other than English. So whenever I have to remember something, I use either of these languages. English would be something that would be like third option. So if you're also from any regional state and you have a regional language which you're comfortable with, you can use words from your language to make mnemonics. Alright, so olfactory, optic, oculomotor, trochlear, trigeminal, abducens, facial, vestibulocochlear, glossopharyngeal, vagus, spinal, accessory, or just accessory and hypoglossal. Alright, so that was all about the cranial nerves. Now we move on to spinal nerves. Spinal nerves, not many names to remember. There are 31 pairs. If there were any names, uh, I would have probably not gone ahead with remembering all the 31 names. But yeah, thankfully we don't have to remember the 31 names. Spinal nerves, these are part of the peripheral nervous system that connect the spinal cord to the rest of the body. It arises from the spinal cord in pairs. When we were studying the structure of spinal cord, we have studied about this, right? Remember? You don't remember? I suggest you go back and watch that video on spinal cord. Alright? They function both as sensory and motor neurons. So all the spinal nerves, they are mixed in nature. They have both sensory and motor functions. And there is in total 31 pairs. And they are categorized into cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral and coccygeal nerves. Do you remember these terms? These were the segments of the spinal cord, if you remember, right? And we have also, I think I have already told you mnemonics of how to remember these in the video on spinal cord. So I'm not going to repeat those mnemonics here. We have good mnemonics which we have used to remember these parts of the spinal cord and the number of nerves arising from it. Okay, I strongly suggest you go back and watch the video on spinal cord for this. All right. So spinal cords are named based on the number and the letter. First letter of the segment which they belong to. So we have the cervical nerves which are 8 pairs and we call them C1 to C8. Pretty simple, right? No complex names. Just need to remember these 5 words and then the numbers. Okay. Then thoracic nerves T1 to T12. We have 12 pairs. And then we have lumbar nerves 1 to 5, L1 to L5. Sacral nerves S1 to S5. And coccygeal, there's a single one which we call C1. Okay. So again, since there is a common C here, you need not, sometimes we don't use the C at all. It's just one because there's only single nerve. They don't name it at all. There's no confusion. There's only one, right? So yeah, here all you need to know is remember these 5 parts. I'll give you a hint. Remember, breakfast at 8, lunch at 12, drinks at 5, dinner at 5, and midnight coffee at 1 a.m. This was the mnemonic that we used. Alright? Yeah, so that was all about spinal nerves. Now, understanding cranial and spinal nerves is not just about memorizing names and numbers. It's also about decoding how the brain speaks to the body and how the body informs the brain about its situation. And in psychology, these nerves are central to the neurological assessment, rehabilitation therapies, and understanding different disorders. They also reveal how elegantly our nervous system is designed. It's a system in our body that is, hardwired with both precision and plasticity, a perfection. So, with that, we finish our block 2 also. Okay. Um, we move on to the previous year questions from this topic. We have in December 2023, this question has come. Describe the different types of cranial nerves and their function. So, see, cranial nerves. You have to remember all the 12 pairs. Okay, their names, their function, whether it is sensory, whether it is mixed or motor, okay, and what exactly they do. Then December 2022, this question came. Differentiate between functions of cranial nerves and spinal nerves. Because it is a 10 marks question, you have to write in detail what are the cranial nerves, which are the cranial nerves, and which are the spinal nerves and their function. And the main difference that this arises from the brain and this arises from the spinal cord. Okay. Then December 2020, discuss the types and functions of cranial nerves. Again, nobody is asking about spinal nerves because there is nothing to remember, right? Just the segments and the numbers. So cranial nerves, if at all the question comes, if you see the frequency is not that great, but whenever it comes, they ask about the cranial nerve. So make sure either you use the mnemonic I am giving you or you make a mnemonic of your own and remember these 12 pairs with their functions. Alright, so that was all about the cranial and spinal nerves. Thank you all for learning with me. If you found the video helpful, make sure you let me know by hitting the like button. Make sure you share the video with your friends too. Subscribe to make sure that you don't miss out on any of the new videos. You can reach me by simply dropping a comment. See you in the next one. Till then, happy learning.